Ruskin, English art historian and critic, defines the concept of architecture as memory of human work, a social and collective memory which, using the words of Victor Hugo, makes architecture the great book of humanity. Architectural symbols denote a place, its identity, its recognizability, because they keep together the social, cultural, and economic values of communities, linked to certain territories, times, and movements that produce them. In this sense, they are the bearers of a memory that is articulated on several levels. A memory related to styles and aesthetic heritage, architecture as a product of art, and a collective memory, connected to themes such as identities and the idea of belonging, stratified and increased by communities. When a building faces the problems of the flow of time and we start to talking about architectural use, we need to keep these premises in mind. The definition of architectural revaluation is a process that occurs when it appears necessary to intervene on a building to recover its style and the pre-existing architectural heritage in order to enhance it and allow its reuse. It must be considered that speaking about style and architectural heritage and not mentioning the historical and collective memory of an architecture can lead to several problems. First of all, the concept of style is the result of a perception that is liable to continuous changes of the cultural, economic, and social values of an era. In other words, what seems closest to the taste, to the aesthetical sensibility of today's society, leads not only to the development of new formal choices, but also to a different attitude and evaluation of what was produced yesterday. Thus, some architectural symbols of the past appear untouchable because they bear an adopt formal heritage, while when we talk about more recent architecture, it seems difficult to understand their importance. An emblematic case is industrial architecture. The development of concrete architectures in 20th centuries in Italy accommodated the cultural changes of the industrialized society that was producing them. Architectural construction are born to obey a new formal aesthetic, which is also due to the possibility of new materials. First of all, iron cement, a great invention of the architect Pierluigi Nervi. This new aesthetic leads not only the production of monumental architecture, but also a huge number of industrial buildings. Cities are increasingly changing their faces, and concrete structures constantly grow inside them because of an unprecedented speed of construction, efficiency, and new economies. These architectures tell us about an era, the post-War I, and about its formal taste, but it is not all. They tell the story of different communities that have become messes and that have poured into large industrial concrete buildings, experimenting and feeling new form of aggregation. As time passed, these buildings have lost their use. Societies have moved away from this frenetic building concrete thanks to a scientific technical progress and profoundly changed aesthetic. And many of the past architectural choices have come to be considered negatively. In Western societies, educated on parameters that stimulate tastes deeply connected to classicism, when concrete buildings have lost their use, they often became just unpleasant construction. We considered only their aesthetical values, neglecting their role in collective memory. This is one of the reasons why concrete architectures have remained abandoned or forgotten. Since a few years, the legislation on cultural heritage seems to be affected by this short-sighted look at the architectures of the last century. The contemporary debate about protection and exploitation is gradually widening in the direction of concrete buildings. However, to protect and enhance this structure, it is first of all necessary to intervene on perception, to educate to a perception. Underlying the historical and collective memories compared to the formal aesthetic ones is a central point to understand why we should choose to preserve them, as we will see with the example below. Manifattura Tabacchi was built in Bologna by Nervi and Bartoli Society, of which Pierluigi Nervi was a member between 1949 and 1957. Abandoned for years, it was at the center of debates where land and real estate interests overlapped with cultural and political ones, and it was one of the many Italian places waiting to be resemanticized and rehabilitated. The preface of a volume dedicated to this architectural work highlights all the concepts discussed before. The distress comes from the state of abandonment that concrete architectures live, when someone realizes that these artifacts constitute an apparently unsurmountable problem since they appear as not belonging to anyone, not longer being part of that historical heritage of spaces and values, of collective memory that allows to create a connection between the individual and collective past. The place seems uninhabited not only by the bodies of the men and women who worked there, but even by the memories that are constantly waiting. Built in 1949, the Manifattura consisted of multiple spaces such as the Ballette, the perfect tobacco warehouse, the common spaces for workers, the storages for chemicals and salts, the offices, the barrel storage and the laboratory, the power plant and the various buildings, including a kindergarten for children of employees. Born as a tobacco factory, it was not only one of the signs of the rebirth of a city like Bologna, severely hit by the Second World War, but also a concrete sign of modernity for its communities. It represented the meeting point for 1,000 workers and, for about 4 decades, a productive industry and a place for social and professional exchange. It remained active until 1998, when the plant was sold, followed by a gradual decommissioning until 2008, the year of its definitive closure and the beginning of decay. In 2011, an holding company, in collaboration with the Bologna Public Institution, announced an international competition for the transformation of Manifattura into a technopole for the city, a center for innovation and research. The project was won by the GMP studio von Gerkan Mark and Pardon of Hamburg, but the project remained only on paper for years. In 2022, the long-awaited redevelopment of the spaces finally took place. The buildings of the Manifattura have become the headquarters of the Technopole, a national European hub of new technologies. Spaces have been reinvented to hold international supercomputing infrastructures such as the data center of the European Weather Center or the supercomputer Leonardo. Some of these areas are intended for activity in research and human development, and others are waiting to be reused for similar projects. Is this an example of good practices of revaluation in industrial concrete architectures? Is it the result of a new awareness in the perception?